Thank you for your interest in the special audio recording of a Teach 2016 workshop. This audio file is a free resource from USA, Canada Sunday School and Discipleship Ministries Regional Office. Recorded at 2016 Teach Conference held at Springdale Church of the Nazarene in Cincinnati, Ohio. We extend appreciation to the presenter who gave permission for the recording to be distributed as a training resource, and pray that it will be a blessing to your ministry. If you have any comments about the content or quality of this recording, please send them to stmi.nazarene.org or call 1-877-240-2417.
All right, well, we're going to jump right in and get started because we have a lot to get through and I don't want to miss something if I can keep from it. My name is Tony James. This is Children's Ministry on a Shoestring Budget. You've been given a handout, and if you're listening online and you need this handout, you can email me at pktljames@aol.com, and I'll be glad to send it to you. I am a huge bargain shopper. And this is now my 12th year in children's ministry and my 5th church in like 3 states. And the same thing has been like every church. Nobody has the money that they need. Regardless of the size, regardless of how many people come, everybody is looking for ways to save some funds. And so that is where this workshop came from. And there have been some things that I have gleaned through my own looking for things, as well as stuff that other people have introduced me to. So in your handout is everything that I'm going to be talking about, with exception of maybe 1 or 2 that you might want to write down. But I did that purposely because we're going to be going so fast that if you tried to write it all down, you'd never be able to get it done in time unless you are really good at shorthand or something. So just trying to make it a little bit easier for everybody. Let's start with the word of prayer and then we'll jump in. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity that you give us to work with your children, and I pray that you would be with us today as we try and be the best stewards that we can be of the funds that you give us, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. So if you didn't get a handout, make sure you grab one of those right there on the table. When you're doing things on a budget, there is one thing that is key, and that is creativity. You have to be able to look at things from different perspectives, from different people's perspectives, to be able to find what you might need. The first thing that you want to do for that is to get a good team together. If you have a good team that will help you, then that is going to be maybe your biggest asset. And when you're looking for your team, look outside the box that you might normally think of. For example, when I was in California, there was a young woman who was on my children's ministry council, and she really didn't do anything with children, but she was incredibly creative. She was an artist by hobby. She did a lot of things with that. So whenever we would start to do something that needed some sort of a creative flair, we would look at her and be like, Heather, do you think we can do this? And she'd go, yeah, possible. Or she could say, no, you guys are nuts. We don't have time to do that. That's too big a project. And we needed that to be able to tell us, because the rest of us didn't have quite the artistic talent that she did. And so she would be able to help us with things and gave us different ideas that we would have never thought of. So think of the more kinds of people that you can bring in, the better, and the more eyes you have to be looking for the bargains that you need. Clearance aisles, end caps, the one thing that I have learned is that it does not matter what time of year, and it doesn't matter what is coming up. I constantly am looking for whatever we might need. So it could be, December 28th, and I may find the deal that we need for next year's Christmas craft because they all just went on sale. So you look right now, one year I was able to find a craft that we needed for an upcoming Christmas, between the Christmas and New Year's thing, and it cost us like 10% of what it would have cost us regularly. So we were able to get a cooler craft than I could have gotten originally because I was looking for it ahead of time. So look whenever you're out to see if there's something wherever you might be, because I have found stuff everywhere from the grocery stores to the Hobby Lobbies to Dollar Trees. It doesn't really matter where you are. the clearance section may have just the thing you need. Even in places like Kohl's or Sears or Penny's, because they may have in their clearance rack the one item that you really needed for a costume for the Christmas program that you have 2 years from now, that you have on your shelf that you know you want to do, but you don't have enough kids for yet. But they have it on sale for $2 today. You know, so those kind of things you just have to look for, and that's a big part of being on a budget. Online things are probably your best bet. There are places like Oriental Trading and Shindigs who always have fairly decent deals on things. Shindigs.com, they are in general a little bit more expensive, but they're a great place to find like the one item that you want to build everything else around. So, for example, one year we were doing kind of a jungle theme, and they had these amazing, beautiful, full color cutouts of jungle animals, and we spent like $100 on those, or maybe $150, which is it was at a much bigger church, so I had a little more money to spend. But because we had those 3 things that were really kind of cool looking, everything else we could build around them and use a lot less funds to make what we wanted. So you sometimes can find the one thing that you're really looking for through them, and they also have good deals. Christianbook.com is amazing. Tons of Christian stuff already, obviously, but just recently they did something that I hadn't seen in a while, or I just missed it in the past, but they must have been clearing out all of their VBS stuff from years gone by, and they had things online that normally we would never have been able to purchase for a Bible school because they were just too costly to buy as many as we would need. But they had things that were $2 and $3 before for a quarter, or things that were $5 for 50 cents. You know, just super cheap. And I bought enough supplies for maybe 3 Bible schools for about $100. I mean, and that included not crafts, but like the object lesson kind of things, and all the stuff for all the classrooms, the books for the teachers, all that kind of stuff, the CDs, the DVDs. I was like, all of these are coming with me, even though I didn't know what I was going to do with them at that point. But those can be really helpful. But those are the kind of things that you have to sort of set aside time every week and just kind of look through. Every week I'll take 10 or 15 minutes when I'm in the office and I just peruse stuff. I'll look at Christian Book and see what's in their discount rack. I'll look like Oriental Trading, what is their clearance thing today? You can't do it all the time. None of us have time for that. But if you set aside a few minutes every week, you'd be amazed what you may come across that you weren't thinking about. Just because it's in your schedule, you know you're going to do it, and you may come across exactly what you need. Sharing resources is huge. If you have other churches around you, even if they're not Nazarene churches, especially when you're thinking about Christmas programs and VBSs, everybody does them, which means everybody has stuff. And they may have what you need, you may have what they need. I have a friend who teams up with another church every year for their Christmas program. And they go together and purchase 2 every year. One buys one buys the other. And then they switch. They do one, make all the supplies for that one. The other one does the other one and makes all the supplies. And then when they switch, they trade everything. The backdrops, the costumes, whatever they need, they switch completely. And so they're only really paying for one every 2 years, which is a huge cost saver. Because even if you have to buy a costume because you have a child that's a little smaller or taller than what they had, you still have one as opposed to 25 or whatever that you have to do. If it's that kind of a costume, sometimes it's just kids wearing their own clothes, that kind of stuff. But so anyway, so that kind of thing can be really handy. Where I am, we have a network of all of the children's workers in the area, and we have a lot of churches in our area. And we used to meet every month. That doesn't happen as much anymore, but we still are connected via email. So the other day, one of the children's pastors from a Methodist church sent an email out and said, hey, I have a storage room that I have got to clear out completely because our preschool is growing and we need the room. Does anybody need stuff? And you were like, what kind of stuff? And she's going, every kind you can imagine. Just come here if you would like it. And so we came and looked through, and a friend of mine who was at a kind of a new start church that had very little, we packed my car out of stuff for her to use at her church. So sharing those resources can be huge, and something that you don't think you need anymore and you'd really like to get rid of can be a big blessing to another church. So before you chuck it, ask around, because somebody else may really need it and appreciate the offer. Hold on to stuff that, let me do this really quick so you're not looking at my dog. We'll come back to that in a minute. There is actually a purpose for the dog, I promise. Keep the stuff that might come in handy. We are very short on storage space at my church, but if there are things that we can hold on to, certain people in our church are willing to keep things in their garages or whatever if we need to. Our first tendency sometimes is just to throw things away because we're out of room. But some things can be used and used again or shared with other people, and if you just throw them away, now you got to buy them again. So if you can find a way to store the stuff that you might be able to use later, that will help you later on. Especially if there are things like props or sometimes even like boxes. If you happen to get a huge box that like somebody gave you from a washing machine or whatever, those are sometimes hard to find anymore. So you may want to hold on to it somewhere just so you can use it next time you need that big box, because we all need those sometimes. And every time I need one, nobody has one. So that's, they're just little things like that that can make a huge difference later on. And if I can tell you to invest in one thing that will help you, and that is a color printer. Because adding a little bit of color to anything can make a huge difference in what you're doing. Whether it's a decoration or a handout to a parent or whatever, even if you don't use it all the time, because they can be pricey if you use them a lot, but if you have a small one maybe for your office and you can use the color, sparingly, it can be a huge asset, because something that would just be kind of blah in black and white can really stand out with a color added to it. And so that's something to think about. We use Proclaim at my church, which is what this is, this program. It's a program for church presentations. And I love this program because, first of all, it's easy. Secondly, it's inexpensive. I have used Media Shout and Easy Worship and all those other things. I used a lot of those from time to time, trying them out. But this one, it's, first of all, you can buy it by the month. So if you want to, it's $20 a month. And for me, when I first got it, it was coming out of my personal paycheck because we couldn't afford it at the church. But while I couldn't afford whatever the year price was, which is actually cheaper overall, it was $20 a month I could make fit. And if ever there was a month that I couldn't make it fit, I could just not have it for that month and then use it again. They also have an added thing that you can put on, which would make it $30 a month. And it's different depending on the size of your church. But you use it, you purchase it based on the number of people that will be watching it. And the lowest is 100 people or less. Well, most of our children's departments are less than 100 people. So it works out well. But the reason I like it and why I'm pushing it is because I have never had a video not play on it, which is one of the most frustrating things that happens, is when you put a video in and it doesn't play on a Sunday morning. Seemed to work before, but it's not playing now. I've never had that problem with this. If it will go into the program, they will play it, unless there's a internet issue that is unforeseen or whatever, but usually that is not the case. So, and the nice thing is I can run it from here on my iPad or an iPhone as opposed to being at the computer if I need to. So there's a lot of stuff on that. A great way to save money on music for me is pick the stuff you like. I know that sounds weird, but one thing I have noticed over the years is that if I don't like the song that I'm trying to teach, the kids aren't going to like it either. So if I make sure that the music that I'm using is something that I myself enjoy, then my kids are going to be more likely to enjoy it, and I end up spending less money on stuff that I don't like. I also end up using a lot of iTunes and things like that because I can buy a song as opposed to an entire album that I won't use the whole album. So if you're not doing that kind of stuff, a lot of the Christian program music is becoming available on iTunes. Group has a bunch of their stuff on there, but note, it is under, you have to look up group music as one word because it won't come up any other way. So if you put it together, group music, I think I have that in your handout for you, but there's a ton of their stuff that you can download like that. And a new one that I put on your website is Dave and Jess Ray. I literally just came across them a few days ago and haven't used their music yet, but it is definitely worth looking out, because if you are the kind of church that you would like to give your families something to take home, or that they can use the stuff at home, if you purchase a subscription with them, and their subscriptions start if you have 1,000 people or less in your church, so I think that's probably all of us, I would assume, then it's $19 a month. And for that $19 a month, literally every family in your church has access to what is in that subscription. So whether it's music or devotions or whatever else they have, they can get to it through that $19 a month, which to me was something I was like, I'm keeping this handy because it may be something I want to do, even if I don't want to do it this minute. One of the things that I use all the time are certain books. But these books can be pricey, and so that's why I brought them with me, because I'm the kind of person that if you're going to use a book, if you're going to buy a book, I don't want to spend $40 on something and then I never saw it, which is, you know, when you're buying it online kind of thing. But this book, the Big Book of God's Amazing Animals, and the Big Book of Kids Sermons and Object Talks from Gospel Light, I am not exaggerating when I say next to my Bible, they are the two that I have used more consistently throughout my ministry. And the reason is they both fit anything. So the Amazing Animals book are great because they have full lessons in them that, you know how sometimes when you finish a series and you don't really want to start the next series yet, but you need an in-between lesson, these are great for that because they're really interesting, they're really fun. They have games in them where you can make up your own, you can set up PowerPoints to go with it. It's really kind of what you want to do to make it as exciting as you want for it. But it has really cool animals, some of which they will have never heard of, some of which I had never heard of. But they have really strong biblical lessons that go along with each one. And so they're great for just filling in gaps, or when you have to, excuse me, pull a lesson together at the last minute because so-and-so got sick and you need to pull something out. You know, they can be great for that. The object lessons and sermon talks, those are very short. They're like 5 or 6 minute kind of things. But I have used those often to build other stuff around. I wrote a series years ago called Extreme Faith, where we looked at important people, Christian people, that had made impacts on the world around us. And several of them were in that book, and so I was able to pull things out. People like Fanny Crosby or Corrie ten Boom, Billy Graham, who else did I do? It doesn't matter, but there's several in there, and lots of others, as well as object lessons that would go along with religious holidays that would be important to the Jewish faith. We read about them in Scripture, but we don't actually celebrate them in our church, and yet when the kids are studying their Bibles and they come across, you know, well, what is this? What is this festival of, you know, pick a festival that's in there? A lot of them are in these books as well, and so you can take time to explain what they are and why they were important to those people. Yes? I bought them in Christian bookstores, but you can buy them on christianbook.com, and I would suggest probably looking there because they're going to be cheaper there. When I bought the books, they were about $20 or $30 a piece. Now I think they're more like $30 or $40 unless you buy them on that, and they're probably a little closer to $30 if you buy them on christianbook.com. But they're really fabulous books for that kind of stuff, and you're welcome to look through them. And they're big books of a lot of stuff, Bible games, Bible facts, all different kinds of things. Also, I suggest every children's ministry, I'm thankful that I haven't had to use this much yet, but Group has something called an emergency response book, and these occasionally go on sale for really cheap, just depends on when you look for them. I think their regular price is about $7 to $10 for them. But in this book, if you have a Sunday school teacher especially that might be kind of nervous about working with a child that's in some sort of an emergency in their life, this has not only what to say that might be comforting for that child, as well as what not to say. So if you have a kid in your youth group who lost a parent, or whose parent went to jail, had a grandparent pass away, their pet died, their family is getting divorced, you name it, anything that would be kind of dramatic to the child, there are tips in here to how to help them, from excuse me, changing family dynamics to bullying, I already mentioned divorce. There's moving, when they're moving away. You know, these kind of things can be really traumatic for a child. Sometimes they're really traumatic for adults. I've had adults that really had trouble with moving from one place to another. And it has some counseling tips, not that we're counselors, but there are things that we need to know, as well as care tips, things that you can do, ways that you can minister them. But I love the things not to say, because those, sometimes we can put our foot in our mouths and we don't mean to. So they have these for children, for teens, and one other section, and I can't remember what it is. I feel really sorry for the people listening to me as I cough. Sorry. If you use videos a lot, you can find a lot of those online. Sometimes you pay for them, sometimes you don't. It just depends on what you're looking at. There's a new program out called Holy Moly that is really cool, and the first lesson is free. I don't think it's in your paper, so you might want to write it down, but it's HOLYMOLY. And their free lesson is on David and Goliath. And it is the coolest thing. I never teach on David and Goliath because it's in their Sunday school classes. It's usually in their VBSs. I just don't teach it on my own generally. But, excuse me, I should have brought some water. They do an amazing job with activities as well as the lesson itself. And their videos are unique because there is no discernible language in the video. Everything is gibberish. And yet you can tell completely what is happening in those videos. And because they are gibberish to everyone, they can be used anywhere in the world. So like if you were taking a trip to a Spanish-speaking country for a missions trip, you could still use these Holy Moly videos in your lessons because there is no language for anyone, but everyone can understand. So they're really cool for that kind of stuff. And I just came across them about 2 months ago. If you make your own videos, you can do an awful lot of stuff with that. Most computers come with some sort of a movie maker on them. And they don't have to be fancy for your kids to be like, ooh, cool. Because it's them. Especially if you use them in the videos, then they want to see it. But about 3 years ago, I went to a conference. And in the conference, I went to a workshop where someone in the workshop mentioned an app called Yakit. Yakit is amazing. Yakit Kids is what you want, and I think it is on your sheet in there. But Yakit Kids is a free app that you can download for your iPad or iPhone, and I think it's an Android thing as well. And it will make any picture that you take talk. So you can use it to make like 15-second videos for your service. That's where my dog comes in. At my church, we do a family Sunday once a month where we do a sermon in a sack. Which, has anyone ever done a sermon in a sack? Do you know what that is? What? You know what a sermon in a sack? Okay, these are phenomenal. If you've never done them, they are so easy to prepare because literally all you need is a sack that you can't see through. Give it to a child, have them put something in it to bring back the next Sunday that you don't see ahead of time. And while you're in front of everyone, you have to pull out the sack, what's in the sack, and make up a little lesson about whatever it is. Which sounds kind of hard to people that have never done it before, but you would be amazed how easily it will come to you with a little practice of what goes on. Anyway, our rules for our sack is that anything can go in it, but it cannot be alive, it cannot ever have been alive, and it can't make a mess. So long as it fulfills those 3 rules, then they can put it in the sack and try and stump me. And usually it's on our family Sundays in front of the whole church. And what you will find, though, every time is that though the kids love this, the adults can't wait. I have more adults come up to me every Sunday that we do this over time, and they'll be like, I was trying to figure out what lesson I would use, and they are coming up with Bible stories that can be associated with that object and wondering if you're going to pick the same one they had. And usually you don't, because there are a lot that will connect with different things, which is awesome. So I made this Yakit to promote to the kids a family Sunday. So this is what it is. There's a picture of my dog.
I wonder what will be in the bag. It could be anything, but
So see, they're really easy. I did one day, I took all the kids that were there, I said, if you'd like to be in a jacket like this, come here, and I took their picture, and then over the course of a few weeks, one of our announcements each week would be a jacket with one of their faces, and they would giggle like crazy to see their mouths doing all these weird things. And you can add eyes, and you can add all kinds of stuff. They even have zombies. I don't really suggest you use those, but they have all kinds of stuff on there that you can use just for fun, and it's easy. It takes about 30 seconds to make a jacket, and then you've got it that you can use. When it comes to curriculum, that is where we will often spend a lot of our money. A lot of time, a lot of energy goes into finding them, and then sometimes once you find what you want, it's way too expensive. So one of the things that I have done when I'm looking for a curriculum, especially if I'm looking for something to give to someone else, because I've been doing this long enough that if you give me a curriculum, I can probably make it work if I have to. It may take me a while to get it together, but I can do it in a pinch. Most people that are just coming into children's ministry would have difficulty with that. So a lot of the curriculums that are out there, group, I think Gospel Light, I would imagine Standard does it. NPH, I think, is beginning to, but I haven't checked into that yet. They will allow you to download a free lesson of whatever they have. So if you are interested in looking at something, if it's a Sunday school curriculum or one of their children's ministry, like children's church kind of curriculums, they will usually let you download a full lesson. The only thing that you wouldn't have would be like the videos or, you know, the tangible things that you would need. I will print them off and give them to my teachers and say, look through these, which one appeals to you? Which one is the way that you would want to teach is going to be the easiest for you to use? And then I can be sure that its theology is correct. But then I know what is going to be helpful for them. And I can go through those. Group is fabulous, but if you've not used them in the past, you need to be aware that occasionally the theology is a bit skewed from our Nazarene. It's rare, but it is there on occasion. If you have 100 lessons, you may have 2 that is going to be slightly askew towards the Calvin because that's their way of training. But because it's children, they just don't dive deep into theology for most of it. I think we dive deeper than most of the curriculums do. So, but they're great starting points for your teachers. And if you look through them, if you're afraid that there might be something and your teacher's not going to know the difference between a Calvinistic theology and a Wesleyan theology, we have to work on that because we really need our teachers to know the difference, but not all of them do when they first start training. So there's nothing wrong with you flipping through the book and saying, you know what, maybe just skip this part of this lesson. The rest of it's good. Because usually if it's in a lesson, it is literally one small section out of a huge lesson, and you can just cut it out, and you're good. So a heads up on that, but the reason I like group is because a lot of their stuff is all-encompassing. If you buy their like Kids Zone Worship or whatever, you get the program itself as well as the videos, as well as the music, and any object lesson that is not something you would find just sitting around your church, they send it to you. So it's really helpful if you're trying to get sort of an all-in-one curriculum. Theirs are really good for that. You can also mix and match. Thank you so much. You're my hero. She's my new hero, my bestest friend. And what is your name? When it comes to mix and matching things, that sometimes is the easiest for you as the leader, because you can pick the things that you want and just get rid of stuff that you don't, and choose things. That I do that a lot when I use these big books. I'll pick things out that I really like and build the lesson around it, and that can save you a lot of money because you've spent, you know, $30, $40 on the book, but in that book you have all these lessons that you can change up and move around and do what you need to, which is a huge blessing. What's in the Bible has some really good DVDs as well, and they now have DVDs that you can purchase for your church that include lessons, and so you have the rights to show the videos and all of that. A little more expensive because you have those rights, but the way that I look at things like Kidmo and What's in the Bible and any of those programs that are video-based but a little more pricey, if your church can afford it, see if you can get one and then keep it handy, because those are the kinds of things that if For example, you would wake up one morning and you're so sick you can't make it to church. Those are the kinds of lessons that your teachers can pick up immediately and just do, whether you're there or not. Kidmo especially, if you have the stuff ready for them ahead of time. I love the Little K programs. They're a little bit, they're cheaper than the Kidmo, but same company. It's about, I think it's around $100 for a pre-K lesson, which is only about 5 lessons. But if you put those together, you make all the cutouts ahead of time, you put all the papers together, and just have them in a little folder somewhere that's like a little box set aside that's like when so-and-so is sick, then if somebody calls in sick, you can just go to that box, pull it out, it's completely ready to go, and your teachers are good. Nobody's having a heart attack from not having stuff together. To me, that's worth $100 for 5 lessons that I know it's ready. Because now I have, and because that kind of stuff is generally so rare, you can reuse it over and over and over again. You can redo the lesson that was just used and add it to the back, and probably a year later before somebody's going to need it again, but you still got it good to go, you know, that kind of thing. Family events and outreach kind of things can also be kind of pricey when you're doing stuff. There are things that we can do that are less expensive, which are really fun. You can take kids to the park, bring their families, and do just kind of a park day. That seems like it would be something that, you know, well, why would we do that? They could go by themselves. They could, but they don't. Most families don't take the time to just take their kids to the park anymore as a whole family. So setting up a day like that where maybe you have some games set aside in case you need a filler because everybody's just standing around looking at each other, then have some ready to go. But we did this at my church not too long ago, and I was amazed because the kids just had a ball. I had stuff in my car we could get out. We never even got it. They just went and played, and parents talked, and it was nice to be able to do that. And they brought picnic lunches, so it literally cost us nothing to do that event. More Than a Movie Night are really fun. If you've never seen this book right here, More Than a Movie Night, you can find it same place you'd buy any other Christian book stuff, through christianbook.com. Some Christian bookstores have them. In this book are about 20 different movies that you can choose to use with your kids. Some of them I personally would not choose to use just because I don't think the movie maybe is the right one for that. But most of them are really good to use for, and inside there is a way to make the whole thing so that when they come, there's a Bible lesson associated with the movie. The craft, or the snack, goes along with the movie. There's an activity that enforces the Bible lesson that goes along with the movie. There's stuff all the way through. So, for example, we did not too long ago, I'm trying to remember which Muppet movie it was. I think there's only one in here. The Great Muppet Caper. And the theme of that one is helping others. And so there's a scripture that goes along with that. The snack that day is animal crackers because of the Muppets and such different animals. And I think they have a pizza option if you wanted to do that, you know, depending on what kind of service that you're doing when the kids are coming. But this book is one of those. When I bought it, it was $23. It's probably a little bit more than that now because it's been several years. But it's a really great way to do something like that. It gives you decorating ideas. The one thing is, it shows you how to be sure that you are legal in your presenting of the movies. But one of the things that you kind of have to be aware of is that you normally cannot promote the name of the movie, which can be problematic because you're wanting your kids to come and yet you can't tell them what the movie is. I always tell the parents if they want to know, I'll be glad to tell them, but we can't promote it. It can't be on any newsletter. It can't be in the bulletin. It just can't be the name out. So what we do at my church is that is now a game. We have the room where we're going to have it set up, closed off. The kids cannot get in until whatever time the movie's supposed to start. And inside the room are clues all around of what the movie is. And the first child that figures out the name of the movie gets a prize. So now it's not, I just can't tell you, it's there's a game, and if you want to win, you got to come, you know, kind of thing. So it makes it more fun for them, and they still get to try and figure out what the movie is, and it's a lot of fun. It's an easy way, an inexpensive thing to do with your kids, but it gives the parents an opportunity to leave, and yet I don't like doing anything without a purpose. I feel like if the kids are coming to us for something, then we need to have some sort of a biblical purpose for them being there. So to me, if I can show a movie and I still can pull a Bible lesson together into it, that's huge. So, because there may be kids that come to this movie that don't come to my church. So I don't want to lose that opportunity of introducing them to something scriptural just because they weren't there on Sunday. So that's why I like that. Game nights are a lot of fun. We do family versus family games at our church, so it's not really people just sitting around a table playing games. It's like kind of have our own wars going on that night. And we will play things like classic concentration. I make these big boards, and if you want to know how, I'll tell you how. They are work intensive, but they are so much fun. And I love the classic concentration game because any kid can play and the adults can play as well. So even if the kids can't read, they can play this game because they're picking numbers that they have to match the picture under the number. And if they match the picture, then you take that off and there's a puzzle underneath that has to be done. So the little kids are matching the numbers and the older kids and the parents are trying to figure out the puzzle. So it's truly a whole family kind of game, which is kind of hard to come up with. We also would play things like Name That Tune, and I would throw in things that we only do in children's church, so the parents are like, I don't know what this is. I have no, so the kids have to win. And vice versa. We'll pick songs that maybe from when the parents grew up, and the kids are going, what is this? You know, so they have to work as a team to win, and it's a lot of fun. And you can do the same kind of thing with like Win, Lose, or Draw, or different ones. You know, there's just fun ways to get the families to interact with each other as well as with other families within your church. Because a lot of times they don't. They drop their kids off and then they don't see those other parents. So this gives them the opportunity to kind of get to know them a little bit in a really fun way. But again, not something that costs you a lot of money. I usually put together about a $5 or $6 prize for the winner of each game. And they're family oriented as well. So it'll be like a family movie night pack with like a G-rated movie in the thing with some popcorn in a bowl, or a puzzle that they have to put together, a game for their family to play. Whatever I can find that seems to fit that family mold at that time. I've even done a thing where they like to make their own cookies so they could have a cookie baking night. You know, whatever you want, whatever your people would be into, that's the kind of prizes that you want to look for. You may not be aware of this, but the Smithsonian Museum does a free museum day every year. The date changes, so it's a little hard to keep up with, but if you watch for it, and there is a Facebook page that is the Smithsonian Free Museum Day or something like that, you can find this day, and anywhere that you are in the country, there are museums around you that are a part of this. And so you can then print off a ticket, and each ticket is worth 2 people into that museum. So some museums are really picky about only 1 ticket per family. Some will let you print off as many as you want, but you can only print 1 per house. So like we would print 1 at my house if I needed to, and then I would print out 1 at the church, and different people in the church would print out 1, you know, for their family and whatever. But the goal was to get everybody to get to go with as few people having to pay as possible. And even if you did have to pay, you could even split that amongst the group if you needed to. But some places, like in our area, there's a place called Connor Prairie, which is a huge outdoor museum of time gone by, which is phenomenal. It's a part of that free museum day. So on that day, we can take the kids for free if we happen to think of that the next time. Last time we took them to a place called the Rhythm Discovery Zone in Indianapolis, which is, I kid you not, an entire museum where they get to bang on things. Drums, harps, everything. They give you earplugs when you come in for everybody. It's a small museum. You couldn't spend a whole day there, but we went there in the morning, had lunch, came back for like an hour, and then went home. And it was great. We had a great time, and the kids loved it. They were so excited about banging on all the drums and the gongs and, you know, everything in the world. They just thought that was phenomenal. So you can find those, and they're around you wherever you are. I can guarantee there's a museum somewhere in your vicinity that would fit that. It's just a matter of finding one that your kids would like. So if you just look it up, they can help you find those. One of the coolest outreaches that I think we do is a coffee shop story time. And every week, I go to a coffee shop in our town, and I simply read stories to the preschoolers. I went to the coffee shop person that owned it. It's important that you find a coffee shop that's going to be comfortable for this kind of thing. I have yet to find a Starbucks that this would work in. Not because the people in Starbucks wouldn't be open to it, but because the way Starbucks is set up, there's just not a spot where you could sit and have preschoolers around you and read and they'd be able to hear you. You know, that kind of thing. They're just not set up for that. But if you have kind of a mom and pop coffee shop in your area, a lot of times they do. And you go in, you talk to the person that runs it, and I just said, hey, I'd love to do a coffee shop or just a story time for the kids here, for the preschoolers. Would you mind? It'd be a half hour. You tell me when is your slowest time, and we will do it then, and hopefully maybe you'll get an extra bump in your business because people are bringing their kids at what normally would be your really slow time. So I let the leader of the coffee shop, either the owner or the manager, whoever, give me the time and the date of, you know, whatever day of the week, and then I promote from there. And you won't have a huge crowd usually. And I've been doing it in my current location for about a year and a half now, and I have 2 kids that come consistently. Everybody else is, you know, in and out. If anybody comes, they don't come, whatever. But those 2 kids, I am building relationships with their families, and they don't go to my church. Now, those 2 go to another church, but they bring people sometimes. And so, you know, that's actually the second one came because of the first one. And it's just a slow building process. But people begin to know who you are. They begin to know why you're there. I don't read necessarily religious books to the kids. I think the closest thing to a religious book that I have is the Berenstain Bears, and we read those from time to time. I just have books set out on a little table with a sign that says we're doing story time. My book bag has the name of our church on it, and that's kind of the most of push, you know, where we are. And it's just there to be there. When I did this in Missouri, it became kind of known that I was there, that I was this preacher that came in and just sat, because we didn't always have kids in that place that would come. But I was always amazed that when no kids came, there'd be an adult that came over and be like, you know, I've been wondering. And then they would start talking to me, and I'd be like, I'd have to be praying, you know, Lord help me, because I was preparing to read to 3-year-olds, and he wants to have a theological discussion. So let's make sure that I don't get these confused, you know, because you kind of get in a mindset when you're working with kids, and you got to get out of that to be chatting with the adults. But it could be a really good outreach, and again, costs nothing except the books. Whatever you decide to spend on books, I go to Ollie's every, I don't know, a month and buy a new book or 2 for $2 or $3, and there you go. You know, I mean, it's not an expensive thing, but it can be a huge outreach for your church. Decorating can be really super expensive, but again, if you're watching the bargains, if you know what you're wanting to look for, then you can really help yourself out a lot. I love scene setters, and I want to show you, this is like one of my all-time favorite buys, and you're going to think I'm crazy. But I went to a Party City one day, and they had this huge clearance section. And they had Hannah Montana and High School Musical backdrops that were there. They had been $20. They were marked down to $1. And I thought, I do not need Hannah Montana or High School Musical, anything. But then I looked closer, and what I realized is that all of the stuff that was connected to Hannah Montana or High School Musical were things you tacked on. The backdrop itself was just plain, and the backdrop just looks like this. The other one is a pink kind of covering. And so I bought like 8 of them. I took them, I had no idea what I was going to use with them. And I actually didn't use them until the next church that I went to. And we have used them multiple times now because they are great backdrops for pictures. We've used them as tablecloths for things. I've used them when I needed like a water scene kind of thing, and I could put water down. This kind of stuff, especially in a clearance section, you may find exactly what you need, even if it doesn't look like something that you'd want. Look a little closer, because what is the thing you don't need may be something you can just throw away, and what you do need is there. So scene setters are hugely helpful, and you can just hang them on your walls, and they don't tear up your walls unless you use, you know, a kind of tape or something that would mess up your walls. But they can be reused if you're careful. If you use staples, you're probably done. But if you use tape that you can pull off of it, you can use them again and again. And they just fold up and put away. And if they do get ripped, I mean, I'm out $1 for that, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a really handy thing for that. You can use all kinds of things, props, stars, you know, whatever you want. And those kind of things, if you have a place to keep them, you can reuse them. Because sometimes one thing that you used for one event can be repurposed for something else entirely down the road, and it won't even look like the same thing, but you can do it. We made, this was not my idea, I don't think. I think somebody else gave me this idea. But we needed old-timey looking cameras, like the old video cameras, the squares and the tops, So we took pizza boxes, and we would paste 2 square pizza boxes together and paint the outside black. And we bought dowel rods and stuck 3 in the bottom so it would stand up. We used a paper cup in the front that we had painted black so that it looked like, a camera front, and then just styrofoam circles cut in half for the top to look like the real. So I think the only thing we had to purchase was the dowel rod and the styrofoam circles and the paint. And we just painted those, and we had those set up for a lights, camera, action theme that we did. And it was great. They were these cool, they looked really neat. And the kids thought they were fun, but they didn't cost us a lot of money, and they were stuff that you could easily find. And I do suggest not using used pizza boxes for that, because the smell is going to become kind of funky after a while. But most pizza places, if you ask them for a couple, they'll give you, for free or very little. Couple other things. I feel like I'm just throwing stuff at you, but there's so much to get through. There are some really good conferences. Conferences are awesome, but they're usually so expensive that it's so hard to take anybody to them. But this one was very inexpensive, so if ever I have the opportunity, I'd be glad to bring people to this one again, because it was like $30 or $25 to get here, or for the registration. The registration is often what kills you, because if you have to travel, then you're trying to find your hotels and stuff as well, which you can split with other people, but you can't split the registration, so that can just really be a problem. Superstart is a retreat for children's workers Superstart is a retreat for preteens that they do all over the country. It's for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. It is amazing, and your kids will love it. If you've never been, I highly suggest you take some kids to go. The registration, I think early registration across the country is like $45 to go. It's a Friday and a Saturday. What we did with my church one time, I live in Indiana, there is a Superstart that's just across the river here. It says it's Cincinnati, but it's actually across the river in Kentucky. And so we brought our kids, we actually stayed here. And my boys stayed in this room, and my girls and I stayed in that room, and the next morning we got up. We just slept in the floor. So you can do stuff like that, because most of the time there's a Nazarene church around where that is, and a lot of them are open to letting people stay with them. It's so fun. The preteens feel so important because this is for them. And most of us know at church our preteens kind of get overshadowed because we have to spend so much time with the little ones that we don't get to give them what they need. So really quickly, the other one is Spark. This one is for adults. And I believe it's 10:30 now, right? We're supposed to be done at 10:30? Yeah. Okay. This one is for adults, for children's workers of all kinds. It is all across the country. They're adding more all the time. Trey and Candace Brooks run this. They are at the Equipped to Engage booth that's downstairs. Such an awesome retreat for your leaders. If you can go, it's really one of those that you can't afford not to go to, because they have so much stuff that they're giving you that a lot of times you get back your registration just in the free whatever you got. Aside from the networking and things. So really, you get part of your registration back at least because of something free that you got. And the last one I want to tell you about is the CM conference, which is only 2 years old. It's a new one. It takes place around Louisville every year. The registration full price is like $169, but usually they have some special deal throughout the year where you can go for cheaper. And if it's still too expensive, they have tons of scholarships that you can apply for to go for free or cheaper. It's 4 days, like 100 and some workshops, amazing worship services. People from all over the world are there. It's truly an amazing, well done conference. So I wanted to tell you about that. One last thing, a couple of online tools that you can use if you haven't already. Make sure you're finding people on Twitter. There are a couple of people on there that I have listed that you can follow, and on Facebook, lots of groups that you can join for children's ministry, blogs, and then Canva is a website that will help you make programs for your kids, make backgrounds and things for like $1 if you need to. this was a tool, one that I made. Whatever you use through Canva, it can cost you $1 or $2 or $3 depending on what you use. But then you have the rights to use that online, in posters, anywhere for that one thing. So if you use their picture, then you've got it all set up and you can use it anywhere without breaking copyright laws. So a lot of times when I want to post something on Facebook to promote something for our church, I will use a Canva backdrop because now I have the rights and I won't get in trouble for that. So that's an idea for things, and they have all kinds, everything you can imagine. So, any questions? If I fed you from a fire hydrant, I feel like. Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you being here. And my business card is up here. Feel free to take extra handouts if you know somebody that you think would use that stuff. And I thank you for coming.